Thank you for tuning in to the Heat Injector training course. Today we're going to be learning about the heat treatment basics, which will cover the principles and the concepts the heat injector system uses when performing a heat treatment. My name is Kevin Krupp. Let's get into it. When you're performing a heat treatment with your heat injector system, one of the first decisions that needs to be made when you show up to a job is where to place the heat injector. It could either be placed in the doorway to the home, which would be using a system called the doorway air barrier. Like it says, it creates a barrier in the doorway and allows the heat injector to have access to fresh air for combustion, for cooling the controls, and cooling the motor. This is also used to pressurize near the end of the treatment. If there is only a single entry into this structure, we're going to have to use something called the air shell. This is something that wraps around the controls, allows you to place the machine in the heat treatment and run a duct to the window. Through that duct will flow the actual gas line, the fresh air for combustion, fresh air to flow across the controls and the motors, as well as pressurization near the end of the treatment. The second important decision you have to make when performing a heat treatment with a heat injector system is how to place your flexible ductwork. The goal is to move as much heat into the space as possible, and we do that by using as large of a duct as possible. You could use the DD316 off the machine that moves three 16-inch ducts and then expand those to be 50 feet or 75 feet. The goal is to take that heat from the machine and run it as far into the home as possible so that as it discharges that lethal temperature on the path back to the intake of the machine, it will lose the BTU energy from the air into the things it passes over. So the last place to heat up is the air around the heat injector because it's the farthest from the discharge. Once the heat injector is discharging lethal heat into those remote locations, typically those are going to be the bedrooms in the home, you're going to want to install the doorway drapes. These hang in the doorway and elevate down to about 18 inches off the ground, and these are not going to stop the air from coming out of the room. They're just going to increase the exposure time the heat has with the contents in the room. Once the heat treatment has been set up and the heat injector is discharging lethal heat into those remote locations, we're going to want to take some space temperatures so we can monitor how the heat treatment is progressing. Once the space is up to a lethal temperature, we're going to want to start to mess it up. This is when we open the drawers, this is when we flip the mattress, this is when we start to move the furniture around. Anything that has not been exposed to the heat will need to be exposed to the heat for it to properly be a successful heat treatment. Once that space has reached the 120 degrees, lethal for the bedbug eggs and the bed bugs, we're going to want to pressurize. We're going to do this by actuating pressurization mode on the heat injector, and this is going to bring more outside air into the space than what's currently in the home. And any bed bugs that had found harborage in cracks and crevices, this is going to flow heated air across them, making sure it's a 100% success. In summary, let's take a look at an example heat treatment job so we know what the process involves. Once the heat injector's been set up, the distribution ducts have been ran to the far ends of the home. The heat injector is now discharging lethal temperature into the heat treatment. The doorway drapes have been hung on the doors to the bedrooms. We're now going to monitor the room temperatures so we know if something's not heating up right, we can balance the airflow by restricting other ducts. Once the space is above 100 degrees, we're going to start making multiple short interval trips of 5 minutes into the space to move the contents around. This is when we open the drawers, move the dressers, stuff like that. Once the space gets up to about 115, this is when we can move the mattress, the pillows, the comforters, the things that we know probably have bed bugs on them. Once the space continues to progress to about 120, we can enable pressurization mode. This is going to push all the heat out, all the cracks and crevices, getting all those bed bugs in those hiding spots through the windowsills and behind the outlets in the walls. Continually moving the mattress, moving things around in the space. I cannot stress that enough. That is the trick to a successful heat treatment, is to move the contents, especially in a heavily loaded home to expose those hiding spots to the heat. The heat will do the job. You just have to find those hiding spots, which is where a mattress may be laying on a floor. You have to get that up, change the location of it, flip it, rotate it, stuff like that. I hope this was enjoyable, and I hope you learned something about how to perform a successful heat treatment with the heat injector system. If you have any questions or want to talk further about this, you can visit us at heatinjectorpros.com or give us a call at 770-529-5640. Thank you.